On April 2, 2025, the world witnessed a resurgence of trade tensions between the United States and China. This date marked a significant turning point in international relations, as the two economic giants once again found themselves at odds over trade policies and economic strategies. The global community watched with bated breath, aware that the ramifications of this renewed conflict could be far-reaching and profound. Former President Donald Trump, returning to the political stage after a 4-year hiatus, wasted no time in reigniting his trade war with China. His return was marked by fiery rhetoric and bold promises to protect American interests, a stance that had defined his previous tenure. Trump's reemergence in politics was not just a comeback, it was a declaration of his intent to reshape the global economic landscape once more. Trump, labeling the day Liberation Day, signed an executive order implementing a new wave of tariffs on Chinese imports. This executive order was more than a policy decision, it was a symbolic gesture aimed at rallying his base and sending a clear message to Beijing. The tariffs targeted a wide array of goods from electronics to textiles and were designed to close loopholes that had previously allowed Chinese companies to circumvent trade restrictions. This move sent shockwaves through global markets, leaving businesses and consumers scrambling to understand the implications. Stock markets around the world reacted with volatility, reflecting the uncertainty and fear that gripped investors. Companies with significant exposure to Chinese markets found themselves in a precarious position as they tried to navigate the new trade landscape. These new tariffs, however, were not merely a continuation of the previous trade war, they represented a significant escalation, targeting a broader range of goods and closing loopholes that Chinese companies had exploited in the past. Analysts noted that this new phase of the trade war was more comprehensive and aggressive, aiming to address long-standing issues that had plagued U.S.-China trade relations. They represented a significant escalation, targeting a broader range of goods and closing loopholes that Chinese companies had exploited in the past. The new tariffs were meticulously crafted to address specific sectors where Chinese companies had gained an unfair advantage, such as technology and manufacturing. Customs officials were put on high alert to enforce the new regulations, ensuring that no goods slipped through the cracks. The impact of these tariffs was immediate and far-reaching, impacting businesses of all sizes and consumers across the globe. Small business owners in particular felt the pinch as the cost of imported goods soared. Consumers too faced higher prices on everyday items, from electronics to clothing. The ripple effects of the tariffs were felt in every corner of the global economy, highlighting the interconnected nature of modern trade. The timing of these tariffs is particularly noteworthy, coming at a time when the global economy was just beginning to recover from the devastating impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. The new tariffs added an additional layer of complexity to an already fragile economic landscape. Economists and policymakers were quick to point out the potential risks, warning that the tariffs could derail the nascent recovery. Coming just as the global economy was showing signs of recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic, they injected a new element of uncertainty and volatility into the market. The pandemic had already strained global supply chains and disrupted trade flows, and the new tariffs threatened to exacerbate these issues. Businesses that were just starting to regain their footing now faced new challenges, as they had to adapt to the changing trade environment. Many economists warned that these tariffs could stifle economic growth and lead to higher prices for consumers. The consensus among experts was that the tariffs would likely result in a slowdown in economic activity as businesses and consumers adjusted to the new reality. Higher prices on imported goods would reduce consumer spending power, while businesses would face increased costs, potentially leading to job losses and reduced investment. The long-term effects of the tariffs remained uncertain, but the immediate impact was clear. A new era of economic turbulence had begun. A key element of Trump's new tariffs was the closure of the de minimis loophole. This loophole had been a significant factor in the trade dynamics between the United States and China for many years. By allowing goods valued under $800 to enter the United States duty-free, it provided a substantial advantage to foreign companies, particularly those in China. This loophole, long a point of contention in U.S.-China trade relations, had allowed goods valued under $800 to enter the United States duty-free. It was a strategic advantage that many Chinese companies leveraged to flood the American market with low-cost goods, effectively bypassing the tariffs that would normally apply to higher-value shipments. Chinese companies, particularly those in the e-commerce sector, had utilized this loophole extensively to sell directly to American consumers at rock-bottom prices. Companies like Shein and Temu became household names by offering trendy, affordable products that could be shipped quickly and cheaply across the globe. The closure of this loophole had immediate and significant consequences for Chinese e-commerce giants like Shein and Temu. These companies had built their business models around the ability to ship low-cost goods directly to consumers without the added burden of tariffs. The sudden change in policy meant they had to quickly adapt to a new economic reality. These companies, built on a business model of selling inexpensive goods directly to consumers, suddenly found themselves facing a drastically altered playing field. The cost structures that had once allowed them to dominate the market were now under threat, and they had to find new ways to maintain their competitive edge. No longer able to rely on the de minimis exception, they were forced to pass on the increased cost to their customers in the form of higher prices. This was a significant shift, as their customer base had come to expect ultra-low prices and might not be willing to pay more. This move was particularly damaging to Shein and Temu, as their entire business model relied on offering incredibly low prices. The competitive advantage they had enjoyed was now eroded, and they had to rethink their strategies to stay afloat in a more challenging market environment. They had built massive customer bases by undercutting competitors on price, often selling items for less than the cost of a cup of coffee. This aggressive pricing strategy had allowed them to capture significant market share, but it also meant that their profit margins were razor thin. The new tariffs threatened to upend this model, forcing them to choose between absorbing the increased costs and eroding their already thin profit margins, or passing the costs on to consumers and risking a drop in sales. This dilemma put immense pressure on their business operations and required them to innovate and find new ways to remain competitive in a rapidly changing market landscape. The impact of Trump's tariffs on Shein and Temu was swift and severe. Both companies announced significant price increases for U.S. customers, citing the increased cost of importing goods from China. The tariffs, which were part of a broader trade war between the U.S. and China, aimed to reduce the trade deficit and encourage domestic manufacturing. However, the immediate effect was felt by consumers who had grown accustomed to the low prices offered by these online retail giants. Shein, known for its trendy and affordable clothing, raised prices on some items by as much as 377%. This dramatic increase left many loyal customers in shock, as they had relied on Shein for budget-friendly fashion. The company tried to justify the price hikes by explaining the increased costs of production and shipping, but the explanation did little to appease frustrated shoppers. Temu, a relative newcomer to the US market but already a significant player, doubled prices on some products. Despite being new, Temu had quickly gained a following due to its competitive pricing and wide range of products. The sudden price increase, however, threatened to erode the trust and loyalty it had built with its customer base. These price hikes sent shockwaves through the online retail world. Competitors watched closely, wondering if they too would need to adjust their pricing strategies. The ripple effect of the tariffs was felt across the industry, as companies scrambled to reassess their supply chains and cost structures. Consumers, accustomed to seeing incredibly low prices on Shein and Temu, were taken aback by the sudden increases. Many had to rethink their shopping habits, looking for alternative sources for affordable goods. The price hikes also sparked conversations about the true cost of fast fashion and the sustainability of such business models. Many took to social media to express their outrage, with some vowing to boycott the companies altogether. Hashtags like #BoycottShein and #BoycottTemu began trending, as consumers voiced their dissatisfaction and called for more transparency from the companies. The backlash highlighted the power of social media in shaping consumer behavior and holding companies accountable. The price hikes also raised concerns among industry analysts, who questioned whether Shein and Temu would be able to maintain their market share in the face of increased competition from domestic retailers. Analysts pointed out that US-based companies might benefit from the situation, as consumers looked for alternatives that were not subject to the same tariffs. The price increases were not the only challenge facing Shein and Temu. The tariffs also led to increased scrutiny of Chinese imports, with customs officials stepping up inspections and enforcement. This added another layer of complexity and cost to the already strained supply chains of these companies. The increased scrutiny on Chinese imports also led to delays at U.S. ports, as customs officials grappled with the influx of goods subject to the new tariffs. These delays disrupted the timely delivery of products, causing frustration among customers who were used to quick shipping times. These delays further increased costs for Shein and Temu, as they were forced to pay for storage and warehousing while their goods sat idle in port. The combination of higher tariffs, increased scrutiny, and logistical challenges created a perfect storm of difficulties for these companies, raising questions about their future in the U.S. market. Faced with these unprecedented challenges, Shein and Temu were forced to adapt quickly. Both companies scrambled to adjust their supply chains, exploring options for sourcing goods from countries other than China. They also invested heavily in automation and other technologies aimed at improving efficiency and reducing costs. In addition to these operational changes, Shein and Temu also implemented strategic shifts in their marketing and pricing strategies. Recognizing that their previous reliance on rock-bottom prices was no longer sustainable, they began to emphasize other selling points, such as product quality, design, and sustainability. They also experimented with new pricing models, such as offering discounts for bulk purchases and loyalty programs. These adaptations, while necessary, came at a cost. Investing in new supply chains, technologies, and marketing campaigns required significant capital, cutting into already thin profit margins. Moreover, shifting away from their core value proposition of ultra-low prices risked alienating their existing customer base, who had come to expect unbeatable deals. The impact of Trump's tariffs extended far beyond Shein and Temu. The tariffs, covering a wide range of Chinese goods, sent a chill through the global economy. Businesses around the world, from multinational corporations to small and medium-sized enterprises, felt the squeeze as the cost of imported goods rose. In the United States, the tariffs led to higher prices for consumers on a wide range of goods, from electronics and appliances to clothing and footwear. This, in turn, fueled inflation, eroding consumer purchasing power and slowing economic growth. The tariffs also disrupted supply chains, leading to shortages of certain goods and forcing businesses to scramble for alternative suppliers. The impact was even more pronounced in China, where the tariffs dealt a blow to the country's export-oriented economy. Factories that once hummed with activity fell silent as orders from the United States dried up. Workers were laid off, and economic growth slowed to its lowest rate in decades. The tariffs also exacerbated existing tensions between the two countries, making it more difficult to find common ground on other issues, such as climate change and cybersecurity.